very helpful. Let me give you an idea of what happened in the area which I represent. So we had three 500-year events along three rivers where they basically converged. The Platte, which runs from west to east, flowing into the Missouri, the Elkhorn from the north down and south into the Platte, near the convergence of the Platte and the Missouri. So you have rain on top of frozen ground, on top of snow, with rising temperatures, causing a slurry of soil and ice that is not absorbed into the ground, smashing against flood control barriers, levees, and other designed systems to protect our communities. So when it hit the Missouri, this wave, this tsunami of sorts, couldn't go anywhere except backwards upriver, which then came over the top of the levee system designed to protect Offutt Air Force Base, which is a significant part of our nation's military infrastructure, which houses, by the way, Strategic Command, which is the place of the most powerful command of weaponry in the world. Going back upriver, all along the Platte as well as the Elkhorn, where you had levee systems failing, it looks like Swiss cheese, according to the Corps of Engineers. The town of Fremont was largely spared, except in the southern portion of it, when the Platte River decided to take a new course, going back to the 1940s route that it once had, blowing out 400 yards of levee that I saw. The little town of North Bend had water just coming like fingers straight through the streets. And then up, going further west, south of the town of Columbus, which is 25,000 people, there's a little truck stop called T-Bones. Well, I saw the initial pictures of T-Bones, which had water and mud 4 feet high. By the time I got there, a lot of that mud was out. And I looked at the manager, Fred, and he said, "We don't mess around. We're Nebraskans, we get it done." The point of all this is there is a real cooperative spirit where I live, and in America in general. The disasters tend to bring about the best of us. Neighbor helps neighbor. Local governments have done an extraordinary job of responding. Our role here is to provide the backup mechanisms, which, when local responses are overwhelmed, we're here to help. So can you speak to any specifics in regards to some things that you've done? You talked about the grain sector, but the livestock sector is also significantly impacted. Back to T-Bones, they have two boots, large 6-foot or so cowboy boots that greet you on the outside. One was found about 300 yards away in Matulka's garage, and the other one about half a mile away on Highway 81. These are big concrete boots, big boots, sunk in concrete, that were just tossed about like toys. So that's kind of amusing, but at the same time, when you see a bloated cow right next to that area on the side of the road, and who knows where it comes from, it points to the issue that the ag losses are going to mount. It's almost easier in a way to identify the losses in the urban communities because they're dense and the resource mechanisms are right there to begin to count. It's hard, a little bit harder in the ag community. So two questions, Ms. Jensen. What specific examples of what you've already done with persons who are benefiting from your credit portfolio? And second, how intense do you see the ag losses rising, or how intense will the rise be?
Congressman, thank you for the question, and it has been an interesting week or two, hasn't it? It's a disaster that I don't think any of us were ready for or anticipated. I'm going to start off my response to your question with a letter I received actually from one of our customers, and this letter was received on March 25th, so within days after this occurred, and it was after one of our loan officers had already been out to meet with the customer, look at some of the extent of the damage they've seen, and start talking about, what about next steps. And this is how we kicked off, and this customer happens to be from Columbus area, which you just mentioned. I am one of the victims of the terrible flooding across the state of Nebraska. It is going to be a long road to recovery. So that's how he kicked it off. So We are in the process right now of meeting with many of these customers in these affected areas. We know that there will be many that will be impacted. We also had many employees impacted. I think we identified 11 employees that had significant damage to their homes. 4 of them may lose their homes. So we're dealing with both in terms of customers and employees. There were a couple unique aspects to what happened there, and you mentioned many of them and how all those things converged at one time. The extent of this flooding has probably had something we hadn't seen. This flooded outside of what would typically be some of your river, typical flooding areas if you were to get some mild flooding. And then how quickly it happened. It converged all within a day or two. A lot of our customers did not have time to get out there and remove grain from bins, remove livestock from those areas, move machinery and equipment out. So the impact is significant, and there are all kinds of estimates, and I know you've seen them too out there, as to how broad this could be. Clearly, it's in the hundreds of $millions, if not billions. What we are doing immediately is when an event like this occurs, what we find is the customers need some time just to kind of get their arms around what's happened and deal with just what's ahead of them. And then one of the first conversations is start to work with their loan officer, their banker, to start talking about what options they have. So the things that we've done so far is this has not only, as you mentioned, impacted a lot of farm producers, but these communities to some degree have been devastated. So the Nebraska Farm Bureau immediately set up a relief fund. You got to give them a lot of credit for how quickly they responded to that. So we've made a significant financial obligation to that, to the Nebraska Cattlemen's, to the Red Cross, and then also the Farm Credit System has an employee relief fund that we've donated a significant amount of dollars to. Add that up, we've donated about just under $200,000. In addition to that, as I mentioned, we're starting to have conversations with our customers, and we have what's called a disaster assistance program that is built for these type of situations that unfortunately we see them from time to time, and we pull that off the shelf, which starts to lay out options for customers to look at. A lot of cases they need to buy a little time. There might be payments coming due here in April or May. So are there ways that we, under that program, defer payments, re-amortize some loans, advance some additional dollars under low-interest loan program to help them? So those are some of the things we're doing immediately and some of the things we've done for the community. And I realize I'm running out of time, too.